The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. Wealth Builders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 173 of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, joined today by my side, face to face,
Hey,
Mr. Kevin Whelan.
Hey, Chris, how you going?
Good, thanks. Yeah, we've had a strategy day today.
Yeah.
Looking ahead to the 2023.
Yeah, feeling a bit tired though after my Bavarian escapades, fresh from Munich.
Yeah.
You know, they do some things rather well. Beer, they do well.
Yes.
Bratwurst, they do very well.
Yes.
But Autobahns, they do well. But they do bad coffee, man. I couldn't find a good coffee for love nor money.
And you haven't got your lederhosen on either today.
No.
Thankfully. Yeah. Well, that's good. All right, I'm glad you had a nice weekend.
I did, yeah.
And we're celebrating as well because we've had our 200th review on Trustpilot this week.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone, so much, because so many people have said how they've enjoyed listening to the podcast, and we'll read our 200th review out after today's interview.
Yeah, very good one today.
Yeah, Davinia Tomlinson, founder of RainCheck. And RainCheck's all about helping women build financial resilience. And
REIGN, though, but not RAIN.
Well, yes. And we actually, we focused on this topic previously in the past, Kevin. Episode 34, we did Women and Wealth. And then episode 36 of Wealth Talk was Women in Business. So going to point back to those episodes in the show notes. They were really good. And, we know that despite outliving men, women currently save up to 5 times less for retirement. And Davinia definitely wants to change that.
Yeah, well, she's a lady on a mission, isn't she? And quite rightly too, because the statistics are always scary. And she brings them into much sharper relief than I need to do that. But I feel passionately about that too. If you look at our SaaS clients, they're typically men, 75% men. The number of women who are in their 50s who've got literally no retirement provision. I think I even might have mentioned a stat on that one way back.
1.2 million of women in their 50s, no provision for retirement at all.
Yeah, I mean, literally just a few days ago, there was National Pension Tracing Day. Not that I got much publicity, Chris, but it's the fact that so many people get disconnected from their pensions, and there's over 1.5 million people who've lost their pensions, and quite a big majority of them are women who, for one reason or another, move on in their life from different roles and responsibilities. They sometimes leave their pensions behind, almost consigned to this won't be worth much. And when they change jobs, change families, change names, lots of changes going on. And those changes often mean that the very casualty is retirement provision and pensions. So that's why we're so glad when people highlight that, but also equally glad when women focus on building their own wealth, be a stakeholder in their own wealth, as Davinia will be sharing.
She will indeed, yeah. So Davinia's mission is simple: to help women build financial resilience and sustainable wealth to live the lives they love. So let's head on to our conversation today with Davinia Tomlinson. Davinia, welcome to Wealth Talk today. How are you?
I'm brilliant. Thank you, Christian. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And I have to, send thanks out to a mutual member of your own community and ours, Samantha, who, initially told me about the fantastic work that you're doing. And I explored and I was captivated. And I knew straight away that we had to have you on the podcast. So it's going to be exciting today to hear exactly what you've been doing as the founder of RainCheck. So do you mind just telling us, what is RainCheck?
Yeah, absolutely. So RainCheck is now 4 years old, and I always refer to it as my third child. So I have 2 daughters. RainCheck is my third baby, and it was basically born out of my career within the investment management industry. So I started my career on a graduate scheme at one of the world's largest asset managers. And I think very early on, I recognized that, whilst I love and still love the world of finance and investing, there were some significant gaps. And of course, I wouldn't have been able to articulate it in that way as a 22-year-old, but there were certain gaps both in terms of representation of women in senior leadership positions within the organization. There were some amazing mentors and power women, that I was able to look up to, particularly within that organization and elsewhere. But in terms of, real concentration of senior female talent, that was an area that seemed to be particularly lacking across the industry as a whole. And then also, if you consider that the finance and particularly the investment management industry is responsible for trillions of dollars of assets under management on behalf of investors worldwide, the proportion that was being managed on behalf of female investors was negligible. And so that really piqued my interest as to what some of the reasons might be behind that. And then fast forward, through to 2018, it was effectively a journey of discovery for me in kind of recognizing that actually, even over the course of my career, whilst there have been great strides taken to, around diversity and inclusion by, trying to get more senior women, and there's lots of great work, you see that on a global basis. But in terms of really closing that gap from a wealth gap perspective, if you like, women are still very much lagging our male counterparts. And so RainCheck is my contribution to doing something about that. So initially it began life as a financial education, qualified and regulated financial advice, and then this kind of sense of community. So kind of a digital platform that enabled women to take control of their financial futures, to understand the building blocks of their, wealth creation, wealth management, what that might look like, and to do so in a way that was non-condescending, non-patronizing, open and relatable. And that's the Rainmaker community.
Yeah, and that community now has spread across the world, right? It's a global
Absolutely.
community.
Yeah. So we have Rainmakers in the UK, the US, the Middle East, parts of Europe. So it really is a thriving global community. And what we see through that, of course, is that whilst, there are different jurisdictions around, from a regulatory perspective in terms of the access to certain types of investment, for example, when it comes to the challenges, the unique challenges that women are facing when it comes to their money, there is a lot of commonality irrespective of where we live.
Yeah, and I think we talk about principles, right? And we teach principles, and those, work all around the world when it comes to building wealth. And Absolutely. As you say, people have the same challenges, and we all have the same mindset, and mindset issues, don't we? I know that's kind of a bedrock as well of what you teach.
Yes, absolutely. We have a 5-pillar framework, and I'm sure we'll come on to talk about this, very similar to what you have at Wealth Builders. But it's really important to provide, when we're thinking about, trying to bring people together, trying to put, to almost distill what are the key challenges that we are facing as women on a global basis, and what are some of the key solutions that we might all strive towards. And I think having some kind of framework and structure around that is a really great way to focus people's minds.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of research just before this podcast, and statistic from Harvard Business Review is that even in 2022, women are still earning 17% less than men on average. So how are you seeing things change? Is it picking up speed, or are things still moving, probably slower than they should be?
Yeah, definitely I would say slower than they should be. I am somebody that is by personality, by nature, very impatient. So, when it comes to things like this, one of the big challenges that I always have for the industry as a whole is, why is it taking so long? So these are issues that we recognize plague women, particularly when it comes to salary. And we know some of the drivers around that. So one of the big ones, for example, is around women taking time out of the workforce, perhaps to have children and then to care for those children in the early part of their lives. And so what that will do, of course, is impact, our lifetime earnings. And of course, that will then have a knock-on effect on the amount that we're able to save and invest for later life, which, potentially opens up other challenges as we come to the end of our working lives. But, from my perspective, it's really about, well, if we have the power to close some of these gaps, why are we not proactively doing that? So that is my, always my big question, if you like. Why is it taking so long?
Yeah. And I heard you mention on a previous podcast as well about Equal Pay Day, and it's actually coming up to that date again, isn't it? 18th of November. Can you explain a bit more about that?
So Equal Pay Day is the point in the year at which women will effectively stop being paid for their work, and effectively you end up working till the end of the year for free. So compared to our male counterparts, women are earning several pence less in a pound than they are. And as we say, we think about when you extrapolate that and you think about the long-term implications for our ability not just to create wealth and to put that to good use in from an intergenerational wealth perspective and legacy building and planning, but it also compromises our quality of life. When you think think about, the different nature, just societally, there are lots of, high-flying professional women, lots of them are part of the Rainmaker community, and we're living and working in a very different way than we had done historically, where, if you think about our mothers and our grandmothers' generation, where lots of them would have been married, lots of them would have perhaps, in a traditional household, you have a male breadwinner, and the woman is, her role is within the home, whereas now we've got, lots of women that are choosing to get married later or not at all, choosing to have children later or not at all. And of course, all of these things will impact the extent to which we're able to, as I say, build wealth. You think about overall household income. If you're a single income household, then of course you're going to already be at a relative disadvantage potentially to a dual income household. So there are lots of these sorts of issues that all conflate to create quite a sticky situation for some women. And these are things that have been compounded. If you think back to the last couple of years in the pandemic, to your question about, have we seen improvements? Yes, there have been strides, as we've talked about with regard to gender diversity and inclusion. But even when it comes to equal pay day, down ethnicity lines, certain types of ethnicities, again, there is a racial wealth gap that opens up, and then that's compounded for women that come from certain ethnicities, Black women, for example, Asian women in the US, Latin American women. So there are some of those challenges too. So it really is, a really critical time for us, because lots of those strides that had been taken were wiped away. They were washed away by the pandemic, where women were shouldering the vast majority of responsibilities for unpaid labour within the household, as well as shouldering responsibility for childcare, social care, and everything else, as well as working.
Yeah. Now, we often see the wealth building process, and we refer to it as transformational, because you see the change. So what are some of those changes that you see most often? What are some of the common things that are holding people back when they first find and discover your community, Davinia? And then after learning, after building more confidence, how do they almost, develop and evolve through that process?
It's a good question. I think for me, lots of the women that come to RainCheck, they find me because initially they think that their big challenge is, I want to start investing. I'm hearing all of this talk about investing. They know my background is within the investment management industry. And so they come to me because I represent, arguably a relatable, friendly face, in a sea of, quite a homogenized industry in terms of the people that you see represented within it, which can be quite, if not intimidating, then certainly off-putting for women who are coming from lots of different backgrounds, but just want to speak to someone who they feel like they can have an open, honest conversation about some of the questions they might have about investing and why they haven't done it. So I think, that's the initial start point for lots of women. There is a lot of conversation about risk. I think there are certain preconceptions and certain stories that we might tell ourselves about being risk averse and being supremely cautious, when actually, there's a lot of evidence that women are taking risks all the time. They are calculated risks, but they are still risks. But what I find, in terms of the biggest transformation is around the psychology of money, our relationship with money, and the extent to which we give ourselves permission to even have these conversations. So whilst, there's a lot of practical and kind of technical information that the Rainmakers receive through our program, where we're talking about this is how you might invest, this is how you might build a portfolio, this is why you need to acquire assets, etc., etc. These are some of the practical elements, but actually the more significant part and the thing that is transformation is helping them to transform their mindsets around money. For lots of women, they don't even want to have a conversation around wealth. The word wealth is completely alien to them. So we view it as something that's the preserve of certain people from certain backgrounds and not necessarily for us. And we are talking about women that are earning good amounts of money. They're at mid to senior management level as a minimum, the vast majority of the Rainmakers, or they run their own businesses. So real high flying women, incredible women that still have a mental block when it comes to having conversations about money, because societally we have been conditioned to believe that it is vulgar, we are not really worthy of talking about money, that it's masculine, it's not for us. And so part of the big transformation is opening up their minds to the fact that actually you acquiring wealth is not just doing a good service to yourself and improving your overall quality of life, but thinking about future generations, thinking about the people in your household, your loved ones, children, partners, parents, etc. And that really starts to open things up. And, it's incredible the things that I hear from Rainmakers as to why, what they've grown up hearing from their parents and other guardians. But also, what are some of the things that are holding them back? Why do they self-sabotage, for example, when it comes to their money? Why are they not, despite having all of the knowledge and awareness and understanding, why are they not taking that first step to invest their money? So I find that starting from whilst they think, actually I need to know how to invest their money, the reality is actually we need to work on your behavioral finance and the psychology of money in order to get you to where you need to be.
Yeah. And the community, I know the training is delivered online. Is there also a face-to-face aspect to the community?
Yeah, so because it's global, the entire program is completely digital, but what we offer is the group coaching, which is far more powerful than I think anybody could ever imagine. And I think there's a real power that comes from women getting together in a virtual room and having very open, candid conversations that are completely confidential, of course. They're within the four walls of the screen. And for us to be able to share, some of the things that are holding us back, to cheerlead and champion one another on. But in addition to that, there is also one-to-one coaching that is offered for all rainmakers, which gives them then an opportunity for us, between us, to appraise their personal financial situation, to isolate some of the individual goals that they have, and to get really crystal clear about how do we intend to achieve these goals and what financial building blocks do you need to have in place to get there.
And we talk about different strategies. There are many different strategies out there. And of course, at Wealth Builders, we have 7 pillars of wealth, and we'll come on to the 5 pillars in a second. What are some of the strategies that someone might expect to learn about when they join a RainCheck community?
So one of the things that sits at the heart of the program is thinking about, what are the 2 levers? If you think about your financial health, what are the 2 levers that make up the bulk of your financial health? So when we think about, I always talk about RainCheck being intrinsic to your overall well-being. And the reason for that is if you think about the relationship between your financial well-being and all other aspects of your wellness, anybody that's in financial distress, and I'm sure we've all at some point in our lives felt that squeeze, felt that pinch, and as a result had that commensurate, anxiety. For some people, it can then lead to panic attacks. It can lead to depression. So your financial well-being is about more than just, how much income you're making. It's about all aspects of your wellness. So that kind of is the linchpin of what we do at RainCheck. When we think about the strategies, we're thinking about what are the different levers you have at your disposal. So, we bandy around these terms online. We talk about net worth. What is your net worth? And so we do an exercise in which we're all, calculating our net worth. And it's terrifying for lots of rainmakers because, again, this language, and it's about getting people comfortable and familiar with this language and applying it to themselves in order to recognize you have a stake. You are your own biggest stakeholder in your wealth creation. And so you have to know your numbers. This is not something we can opt out of. When we think about our net worth, it's saying, okay, well, what assets do you have? What liabilities do you have? And how are we making these calculations? So it's establishing, what can I do to improve my net worth position? Because I think lots of us start from a place of net worth has to be preceded by the word high or ultra and high. And so if you're just somebody that, everybody has a net worth, but if you're somebody that has a middling net worth, and lots of rainmakers say, oh my God, Dav, my net worth is negative, like it's terrible, I don't even want to confront it. Well, actually, then it's thinking, what are the levers that I can pull? And we apply this same principle, this exercise, to our net cash position. So thinking, if you think about your net worth as your long-term wealth creation metric and your net cash as a short-term kind of dynamic operational metric, and we are comparing and contrasting the 2 throughout the program and saying, right, if you've got a net worth that's X as at this state, what can you do to improve it? So you can either increase your assets or reduce your liabilities, or you can do both simultaneously. So that's already 3 actions that you can take. And it's a similar principle for your net cash. If on a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month basis, you find yourself really squeezed going, how come I got more month than money, before payday? What can I do? So it's improving my income or reducing my expenses or doing both simultaneously. And what are some of the things, the actions that you might take? So again, it's drilling down. It's saying, right, these are the principles. These are the metrics if you're thinking about your net, your overall financial health. And what are the specific actions? So this is not a theoretical, let's just get together and shoot the breeze about money. It's what are we actively going to do that will mean at the end of this 6-month program, you can look back and track your progress in a really quantitative way.
Yeah, so giving them a long-term plan, because we know building wealth takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. And I know you talk about setting goals and kind of working backwards from there, right? So
yes. Yeah. So I think, when we think about our goal setting, and again, this is a thing that everybody talks about goal setting. Many of us who come from corporate backgrounds will know about appraisal time and being able to set your goals and setting smart goals and all of that. What we do at RainCheck is to say, right, when you're thinking about setting your goals, what are the costs associated? So of course, again, we're coming back to the numbers. What are the costs associated with you achieving those goals? And of course, there is a financial cost. So lots of us will be able to immediately say, right, if I want to buy a house, then this is what it's going to cost me. This is how much I might need for a deposit. But then there are a number of other costs that are associated. So what's the opportunity cost? If you're putting all of your money away to save for a deposit on a house, what are some of the things that you might have to give up? Are you willing to pay the price? It's the emotional cost. It's the mental cost. Do you have the capacity right now? Are you completely swamped, burnt out, stretched? If you're not in a position to bear the cost of achieving some of these goals, then what it means is you have to take a decision again as to, is this a goal I want to pursue? Do I need to make it a lower ranking goal? And so it's, again, really helping the women, guiding them and coaching them around, are you willing to pay the price, and appraising it against one of a number of different criteria. So it's not, this is a goal I want to achieve, and it's something really abstract, and it's, let me put a picture on my vision board. We do all of those things too, because it's really important that, that we retain that element of, big visionary, big picture. But in order to get to where we want to get to, we have to take action, and we have to recognize that it's a number of micro steps that are required to get to the big goal.
Yeah, we had a previous guest who's talking about you've got to create a life by design. And sometimes in the short term, you have to cut back on some things, you have to kind of, sacrifice in order for that long-term gain. And I think that's kind of what you're saying as well, right? In some respects. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about pillars then. And, how do you refer to pillars within the community?
So we talk all the time about the program being about helping you establish solid financial foundations that will last you a lifetime. And the way that we do that is through our 5-pillar RAIN framework. So it's REIGN. And it's just a really simple acronym that enables us to kind of work through the modules. And, there are 6 modules. It's a 6-month program. So lots of them will be, woven in across each of the pillars. But we've got, so for the R, it's about, thinking about retain. What's your retention strategy when it comes to your money, when it comes to wealth? Because, we've all heard those anecdotal stories and seen the memes about the lottery winner who wins £1 million and then blows it instantly because they have not been trained as to how to manage that money. So it's about, how can I protect what I have with all other things being equal? Thinking about, we're about to enter into we're in a torrid time globally from an economic perspective. And if you're thinking, right, gosh, I'm really frustrated, I'm not able to earn any more, and I've got all of these other demands on my time, but the one thing that you can do is protect what you have. And so we talk through some of those strategies around that. And that includes a number of different things. It's about tracking your expenses more effectively. It's about budgeting. It's about thinking about, certain financial protections that you might need to take to make sure that you're preserving the value of any assets that you've got, including yourself, including your own life, so that that I've got a good infrastructure around the things that I do have and I'm protecting that. The second pillar is E for earn. So it's, what can I do to diversify my income, to increase my income? So how can I maximize the income that I've already got, which might be through negotiating more effectively when it's time for a pay increase. If you're a business owner, it's thinking, when last did I increase my rates, in exchange for the value that I'm delivering to these clients? Can I take on any more clients? Can I get a side hustle? What are some of the things that you can do to generate additional income? The third pillar is I for invest. So this is when, again, lots of women come to me because, they're particularly interested in my investment expertise. And it's thinking about all the different types of asset class that are available. Of course, immediately people assume that investing is all about the stock market. But there are a number of different asset classes and we talk through them. The G is for grow. So now, having invested that money, how are we growing it? What's the actual strategy? What's the asset allocation strategy to grow that money? And then the N is for nurture. So when we're thinking about our money, what kind of system do we have in place? We don't want to spend hours and hours a week poring over, what's happening with our money, all of these different accounts. We don't really know where anything is. Lots of rainmakers say to me, oh my gosh, I've had 3 or 4 different jobs since I left school or since university. Don't know where all the pensions are. Don't even know if I had pensions attached to any of them. And so we don't want to spend time, it's time that could be spent somewhere else, another value adding activity. So we have systems in place to make sure that we can track everything effectively, that we are keeping ourselves up to date. We are holding one another to account. And that's the 5-pillar framework for RAIN.
We love that. We love a framework. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that, Davinia. And one of our pillars is intellectual property. And you're in the process, or perhaps have already finished writing your first, is it your first book? Cash is
Queen? It is my first book. Yeah. I'm really excited.
Cash is Queen. And this is written exclusively for preteen and teenage girls. And we'd love to hear more about that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Honestly, I feel so proud of it. So effectively, Cash is Queen is a process that started probably 18 months ago. And it is now written, it is available for pre-order. And it really is my contribution to helping and equipping the next generation of rainmakers, young women who will enter the workforce, who will enter adulthood. And unless we proactively educate these young women, and of course, this is not something that applies uniquely to young women, but given the challenges that we know adult women go on to face when they, enter the workforce, without having the right level of financial education, without having the awareness around some of the issues they might face and how they might mitigate them. Of course, the onus of responsibility is not exclusively on us, but we are very stoical in the Rainmaker community. We're all about controlling what we're able to control. So cash is queen. As somebody that is a mother of 2 daughters, it really was, really special for me to be able to say, this is my contribution to equipping that next generation with the knowledge, the tools, and the mindset to take control of their financial future very early. So if you imagine a 13 or 14-year-old coming and having a conversation with their parents or godparents or grandparents even around, let's talk about how money is managed in this household. How can I earn my own money? What should I do with that money when I earn it? How can I avoid some of these social media scams? There are constant scammers out there preying on young people. How can we help them to identify the clues and red flags and raise the alarm with the grown-ups in their lives? How can we help them to conceive of a reality in which they're able to, enjoy their work, to pursue careers that really enrich them and fulfill them, but also enable them to preserve their wealth, get them comfortable with the language early on, so that we will have, a super confident, super financially savvy generation of young women that will be coming up through the ranks, that will hopefully have far fewer challenges when it comes to their finances than myself and my peers had when we came out of university and didn't have a clue.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely amazing. And we were talking beforehand, obviously sharing about Wealth Builders for Families, which is the program we've been working on as well. And we both agreed that you have to get the parents involved, right? Yes. The education system is still teaching the same old ways it was probably when we were at school, right? Hasn't really evolved. It's very tough to kind of change that. But the parents of the future, they can share obviously their enthusiasm and that's I think a common ground that we both have there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah, and the book is out on the 3rd of January, that's right?
Yes, so it's available for pre-order now, but it's out in the bookshops on the 3rd of January, yeah.
Good. Well, I'll make sure that we share a link with this podcast so anyone can pre-order that right now. And, I just have to ask, I suppose, Davinia, with the economic climate as it is at the moment, with lots of concern, lots of worry, probably the next few years being a little bit, up and down, what's your advice? What are you saying to your members about how to build wealth over the next few years ahead?
Yeah, so for me, it really is about, again, knowing your numbers inside out. So, this is not something that we should be shying away from. And I recognize that there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of confusion and uncertainty. And I think, interestingly, this is something that is not unique to those at the lowest end of the income spectrum. I think that is a misconception that many of us will have. There are rainmakers that are earning significant amounts of money and still have, whilst the challenges may be different, the anxiety remains. That uncertainty that we are all thrust into as a result of the economic volatility is something that, impacts everybody differently. And so what I'm saying to people is, I'm hearing from people, oh my God, the value of my investments today versus January, at the time of speaking, it's the end of October. And, people are saying, I really feel like I should pull my money out of my investments and I should move it somewhere else. I should put it into a savings account because, I feel that it's more secure. It's not going to lose value. And so again, it's going back to first principles and, reiterating the messages around the reason we invest is to benefit from compounding. We want to benefit from compounding over the long term. And whilst we're seeing, increased rates, certainly in some of the savings accounts, as interest rates are increasing, from the Bank of England, at least in the UK, and actually globally, the Federal Reserve is doing a similar thing. And we're seeing this out, across the globe. Whilst interest rates are increasing, which may mean that they are passed on to some degree through to savings accounts, inflation is still outpacing the rate of interest that you might be receiving on your savings account. So you are still, in terms of your purchasing power, worse off if left there. So it's, again, thinking about hold some cash. There is still a place for cash in your portfolio, but it is not going to be a significant net contributor to your wealth creation. You still need to maintain that focus on investing in assets. So don't by any means pull your money out of your your investments, look at your asset allocation, look at the risk profile of your investments. If you have a financial advisor, obviously have a conversation with them, but recognize that this is not the first economic downturn that we've experienced in our lives. It is frightening because for lots of us, it's perhaps the most significant one, or the worst one that we've experienced in terms of our working lives. But investments, is ultimately a long-term wealth creation strategy, among a number of others. And it's important that you're able to hold your nerve and take that long-term view on the basis that, just like we've done in history, we will, weather this storm and withstand the market conditions that continue to prevail. So it's just about, looking away, making sure that you know your numbers, not checking avidly every day if that's going to raise your anxiety, but just trusting that the markets will always correct themselves, and that over the long term, you will still create the wealth that you were hoping to for yourselves.
Yeah, no, that's great. And as you say, over the long term, the markets just continue to get higher and higher and higher, don't they? Davinia, thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. If anyone who's listening now wants to go and follow you, check you out on social media, where are some of the places they should head to?
So the first place I would always ask people to check us out is the website. So raincheck.com. So it's RAINCHQ.com, and sign up to the newsletter, because that's where you hear first about anything, including the book, and the launch of the next cohort of the Rainmakers Academy, which goes live in January. And then you can follow us on all social media platforms at Raincheck.
Fantastic. Well, we are definitely going to be following you and looking forward to the release of the book. So good luck with that, and look forward to catching up with you again very soon.
Brilliant. Thank you, Christian.
Okay, great chatting to Davinia there. We'll pull out some of those wealth lessons in just a second. Kevin, let's get to that 200th review first. Mm-hmm. So congratulations, Rob, and thank you, Rob, for being our 200th reviewer on Trustpilot. And Rob says, I've gained so much knowledge listening to podcasts, and then WealthBuilders educational online courses really helped me forwards. However, after a question I posted in their Facebook page, I didn't expect to get a reply from Kevin offering to help. And then a one-to-one Zoom with Paul Brooks really put my mind at ease and giving me clarity as he explained a strategy or two that will really help me focus on building my SAS pension. Many thanks, Kevin, Paul, and the team.
There you go. So it is a team effort, isn't it, really? So the question would have gone into the help desk. The help desk, I will often take a look at, and I love to be available. I know sometimes people think that perhaps I might not be available, but I like to be available, want to be. And I think many people will testimony to that. But also yourself and Paul and other members of the team pay attention too. So SAS is a very specialist area. Everybody's heard us talk about that. It's a way of, well, as Davinia was saying about so many people, so many women don't take a stake in what they're doing. SAS is a way for people to absolutely take a stake and to be a owner and a creator of their own pension wealth. So their pension becomes a part of their future, not a sad representation of where they were in the past. And I like that very much. So thanks to our 200th reviewer, and we look forward to many, many more.
Yeah, indeed. And lots of parallels, lots of shared values with Davinia, shared pillars in a way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it when a good pillar comes out.
So, yes, and of course, a global network that Davinia's building there. And I think we've said previously that really the principles apply no matter what country you're in. There will be nuances, obviously.
Nuances for sure, but principles, best thing is to learn principles, isn't it, really? Because principles mean they will work wherever you are. And also it dispenses with this notion that somebody's a guru, somebody's got an opinion that somehow has unmasked some secret. It isn't secrets that make you wealthy. Distinctions, yes, but those distinctions are more often born out of principles followed by others. And then you find a pathway that goes, wow, that's interesting. I never saw it from that perspective. But it's a perspective taken on a principle, not some kind of wacky idea that comes out of something that is just faddy or something brand new.
And Davinia said that your net worth is really your long-term wealth creation metric, and your net cash is your short-term operational metric. What do you make of that, Kevin?
I'm not really sure about that so much. I think she's a very eloquent lady with some interesting ideas, but the reflection and the parallel, I suppose, is when we talk about wealth builders, we talk about building wealth from a perspective of having a solid, sustainable flow of cash from the ownership of assets. Well, if you build an asset, it's got two dynamics. One, the cash flowing aspect of it, whether it's property, whether it's pensions, whether it's your home, intellectual property. We probably know what those pillars are by now if you've been an active listener. But in addition to that, each pillar has a value, and those values hopefully will be sustainable, or in fact they will grow. Certainly you'd expect that with property or real estate. So the combination of two, one is a snapshot, take a photograph, where are you right now? Very relevant for things like inheritance and inheritance tax and so forth. But of course, we think the cash flow is the more important of the two, because you can spend cash, you can't spend your assets, because always there's a big tax implication, and leverage can get in the way of that as well. So, but of course you can work on eliminating your liabilities, building your assets, all part of wealth building, to ensure that you give yourself stress testing, particularly relevant right now with interest rates on the move. And of course the Bank of England have increased base rates to 3%. So consequently, the margin for lenders will tend to rise. We expect to see interest rate rises, which will put more pressure on people who are borrowing to build their wealth. So both are equally important, but cash flow and net cash flow is the one that we focus on most within Wealth Builders.
And we know the mindset is the starting point. You have to have the end goal in mind, and also you have to overcome some of those fears and issues that we know hold people back when it comes to building wealth. And that was something I thought was interesting in the way that Davinia talked about, really thinking about what are the costs associated with achieving your goals. And actually there may be a time cost, but it could be an emotional cost. Do you have the headspace right now to be doing this? So quite interesting concept, that.
That's an interesting one. It's not one that I've looked at as an angle, but I definitely resonate with her thoughts. As I said, a very eloquent lady with some great thoughts of her own. And, we talk a lot about ROIs. You get a return on investment. That's an ROI. Reason to overcome inertia. Get off the fence. That's an ROI. You've got the return on your intellect. That's an ROI. You've got a return on interaction, the fact that you're in a community. That can bring enormous value. That's an ROI. And lots of other ROIs as well, including impact. Doing things which have a good societal impact, that's a return on impact. So that's another ROI. She's flipped that very nicely to talk really about a cost of investing. So the emotional cost, the physical cost, the time cost, and maybe quantifying those in advance will be really clever, because it allows you to think through, well, what do I need to do to orchestrate things to make this really work well? So very smart thing.
Yeah, and hence why working with a coach, with someone to bounce those ideas, have a sounding board is so valuable. And we know it's hard for people on their own building wealth. They can sometimes feel a bit isolated.
Building your wealth on your own is one of the hardest things to do, because you don't always get to make those distinctions. That's talking to somebody. Listening to a podcast is great. You can get a distinction or two from that. But the best way to interact is to talk and engage with other people, because they'll give you a different way of looking at things, different perspective on things. Even just the sounding board benefit is a good thing. You talk to somebody, hear it out loud. And we do that a lot, don't we? The reason why we meet in what we call a leadership team is because we like to hear each other's viewpoint, to see if that distinction that you get from somebody else just sharpens your own thinking a bit. So being involved in a community, and it's nice to see that she's trying to lead one too.
Yeah, and another fantastic thing that Davinia's working on is the new book, Cash is Queen. Mm-hmm. And this ties in so nicely with the Wealth Builders for Families program. And, hopefully we can find a way to bring Davinia in and, share some of the amazing content that she's included in that book with our community.
Well, absolutely. Some great IP there from her perspective. And what a great title for a book, Cash is Queen. Well, we've heard Cash is King, but she's taken it to another level. So I liked everything she had to say, Chris. Good choice of guest.
Yes, so thank you so much, Davinia, for coming and sharing with us. And if you want to go and check out Davinia's Raincheck community, then we'll put all of the links in today's show notes for you. So we will be back Same time, same place next week, Kevin.
I don't think we'll be in this place, but we'll be in a different place for sure. And until then, my friend, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.